Kia ora e te whānau, I'm Matt Raymond and welcome to the first of our DCR Summer Series episodes. We'll be bringing you our most popular conversations from 2025. Kicking it off this week, we're taking it back to March 2025 in episode 318 when Ali and myself spoke to the one and only Jasmin Paris. Jasmin Paris entered the wider public consciousness when she became the first woman to finish the Barclay Marathons with just 99 seconds to spare. Ironically, for a race that eschewed publicity for so long, the photos of her sprinting the final 100 metres to the Yellow Gate are now arguably more famous than the Barclay itself. Whilst this might be Jasmin's best-known achievement, it's far from her only one. Spine winner, Bob Graham round holder, fell running champion, senior lecturer in veterinary science, mother and partner, Jasmin's life is full. Ali and I spoke to Jasmin about all this and Green Runners, the organisation she co-founded with Damien Hall to advocate for and address climate issues related to the sport of running and the wider world. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it with Jasmin Paris.
I'm very excited to have on the incredible Jasmin Paris, but actually, should we call you Small European Woman? Were you happy with that? What would you have called yourself, Jasmin?
I would have called myself Jasmin, yeah. But if you want to call me Small European Woman, I think I've learned to respond to that.
We don't. We'll go with Jasmin.
Yeah, we'll stick with Jasmin.
It's one of those, what are they called? Cross-cultural junctions, really, isn't it? It's what a thing. Jasmin, thanks for jumping on with us. We really do appreciate it. And I guess just to kind of start off, you were telling us you've just been in Switzerland. Were you running or skiing or...?
No, yeah, we were skiing for the first time. We took the kids for the first time. And because we try not to fly now, we, for environmental reasons, we took the train. So there were actually 4 adults and 4 kids between 3 and 7. So it was a bit of a mission getting there from Edinburgh to Switzerland, but it was so worth it. I mean, the kids loved it. They learn so quick at that age. And by the end, you're all skiing slopes together. And my husband and I also managed to get out individually with a Swiss friend, to do some ski touring. So we both did like 2.5 days of ski touring, which is incredible because it's just like, I think that chance to just be in the big mountains and the wild places and was so good. It was so good. So I think, it's hard coming back to civilization. I always get this kind of slight blues when I return to civilization and sort of, see how commercial everything is and yeah, but it really sort of recharged me. Yeah, it was really good to get into those big mountains.
And do the kids love it, Jasmin? Like, obviously they've got this mum, and I'm not sure about your partner, but who absolutely loves the outdoors and wild spaces. Like, are they the same? Are they growing up that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think kids, they don't really know what's normal, do they? I mean, they just see they assume it's normal. That this last summer we did, we spent lots of time outside with them. We did 4 days of hut to hut in the summer in the Austrian Alps. And they loved that. They loved like the kind of experience of having to reach the next hut and the whole thing of, getting your meal there and sleeping in the dorm. And lots of people gave them sweets because they were little on the trails they love the whole thing. But I don't think they'll realise till later on maybe that that's not what all children do at the age of 3 and 6 or whatever. So I think it's just normal to them. Same for the running. Both mum and dad run, but that's for them. It's just normal that we might disappear out for a 4-hour training run of a weekend or something. So I think same for the Barclay and stuff. People often ask what sort of what effect it had on my kids or whether they realised what I did. And my son, for sure not. He's the little one. And my daughter, maybe it garnered a little bit of respect for maybe 10 minutes or something, and then it passed. So they're really good at keeping you grounded, kids, and kind of bringing you back to the real world.
Were they there when you did the Barclay, or did you go solo?
They weren't in the States. They were my mum and dad were looking after them here in the UK. Oh, yeah. So we're really lucky to have lots of support from my parents and from Conrad's parents. He's my partner. Really, really good family support. So they were here. Standing around in a wood waiting to see somebody for 5 minutes wouldn't have been much fun for them. And they had school anyway. So, yeah, they were back here.
I was more thinking about your recovery, Jasmin. You know how it is, like you finish this really big thing and then it's straight back into parenting, like, Mum, can I have some food now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like after the spine race and my daughter was just 1, and yeah, I got back and she was, straight as I'd had a shower, she was there because she was still breastfeeding at that time. And once I'd had a shower, she was, yeah, because before that, I think I smelt and I looked funny and she wasn't sure. But the minute I'd had a shower, she was like, oh, that's the milk source come back. So it was exactly like she described.
Oh, funny.
I wonder if it'll be one of those things too. It'll be a later teenagehood before the kind of, when they look back on it, it'll be something that you've done and you've grown up with it. And your mum finished that race. What was it? The Barclay marathons. It'll be something in their lexicon, but it's not until perhaps later in life or early adulthood that they'll look back and perhaps go. I'm finding that with our oldest. He, not that I've done Barclay, but the same thing. He's grown up with a very average, both parents very average athletes, and now he's sort of going, oh, okay. It's an odd thing that there was a large stage of contempt, and now there's sort of a grudging kind of awareness that, it's slightly out of the what you'd consider ordinary. How I mean, with that spine race, you went back to work on your PhD pretty quickly, didn't you, as well? So it wasn't just the kind of straight back into parenting; it was straight back into your PhD.
Yeah, I was writing up my PhD at that point, so I just literally took off the days to run the spine. And I think I got back and my PhD supervisor asked to meet me about something. And we were actually writing a paper at that point, so I think anyone that's done scientific publications knows that when there's a paper to be written, the supervisor is like pretty intensely pushing it forward. So I think I was like eating my first or second breakfast and chatting to him like the day or after the race or something. So, but then, again, that's good because I love the work that I do. So it's fine. But yeah, in terms of recovery, I sometimes I think that's like the biggest single thing that is different between me and a professional athlete, because it's not even so much the time for the training, because I can just about squeeze that out of a day, and there's a limit to how much time you can spend training, but I think it's the recovery that's the big difference in a sense, because it's difficult to find that, it's difficult to make enough time to do the training and to sleep enough and to maybe get the kind of easy recovery that you would get after a training session, that sort of thing, and make sure you feel right and all that. So that's the challenge, I think, the biggest one for me.
And I think that is probably what makes you so admired and so relatable to people all over the world. Like when I messaged you, I said, Jasmin, when you finished the Barclay, there was this like whoops. We were on a training camp in the Blue Mountains in Australia, and there were these screams of delight ahead of me on the trail, just out into the Blue Mountains, and they were going, she's done it. And I think, like that's part of why you're everyone's champion, like that was a real kind of almost like the lunar landing moment for trail running, like female trail runners. And when I've talked to people I've said, what do you want to hear from Jasmin Paris? And they were like, how does she do it? Like, what are her hacks for being a vet, being a mum, being this amazing runner? Like, so give us your secrets, Jasmin.
I do. I guess I'd always I want to start by saying A, it's not easy, and B, I'm always a little bit reluctant when I answer this question to I want to acknowledge that A, it's not easy, but also I would never want people to feel that they are not good enough because of what I answer, because then that they're not doing enough. So I just kind of just clarify it with, this is just the way that it works for me. But it's really tough being a parent and trying to have a career and also be an athlete. I sometimes feel like I'm split 3 ways. I'm a clinical academic, so I do research on clinics. I'm trying to run against some professionals, and then I'm doing it kind of completely amateur. And at the same time, I'm working mum. So there's all 3 things that massively clash with each other and that pull you in all directions. But what, before I can say more about how I guess I do it, I do think there's advantages as well. So people forget that, but there are advantages to doing the 3 things at once. So for one thing, I run for fun. So my career isn't dependent on it. So that means the pressure is off, and it can still be just a joy and a hobby. I can choose which races I do. And maybe I don't race as much anymore, so I can just focus on the big things. And in between, I'm doing the training. And it's actually really fun to get into really focused training and forget the world. And nobody cares what you're doing because you've got no sponsor, nobody to speak to about whether you're promoting the band. I don't have to do social media and all that sort of things that a professional athlete would. Do you see this? So there's those advantages. And then the other advantages are obviously, I find as a mum that getting out for a run makes me a better mum. So I just find that I'm just more tolerant and I'm a happier person. And it's just it's an hour in a day, but it's actually pays you back a million times over in the kind of both as a mum, but also in my career, because my job can be quite stressful when I'm on clinics and quite kind of high impact decision making, and a lot of people, I'm kind of fairly senior now, so a lot of people come to me for advice and asking what they should do, and that sort of having to make decisions, for maybe a 10-hour day non-stop. It's easier if you've got something there it's like you've recharged your battery every morning by going to the wild places and just not even having to think. You can just kind of plod through them, or see the sunrise, or work really hard and get that massive adrenaline rush, or that joy of running downhill. All those things kind of, I feel like it's there in a bank for me. So that was to kind of my preamble to the question, because I think it's a lot more nuanced than people make. It's not just a case of it being a bad thing, having to do lots of things, because there are lots of advantages to having the kind of balance that I have. So in terms of how I do it, well, firstly, when I'm training really hard for things, I would say that for something, say I was training really hard for Barkley, I would say that to some extent I try, I kind of try and prioritize the thing that I'm pushing for. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that my family, I always want to be the first thing. That's the most important for me. But there is a little bit of leeway, and certainly in terms of non-clinical work, that I can push harder at sometimes than others. So like, for example, at the moment, I'm not training for anything big, and I'm doing a lot more research in the evenings and things as well. So, out of a standard work day. But kind of the opposite is true, that if I was training really hard for Barkley, I might be able to take a little bit of a back seat. It doesn't mean that I'm not doing the work. It's just that it just depends what your main priority is at that point. So that's part of the balance. But then just in kind of a purely practical point of view, I mean, I think I've said lots of times in interviews, I do my training early in the morning. I think a lot of people with parents would understand why that is, it probably started when the babies were essentially newborn, and it was just the easiest time to get out and know that the baby would continue sleeping next to my husband in the bed, and that I would get that kind of hour and a half to go into the hills. And so that's continued. I always find that that's the kind of this magic secret hour or two of the day, because there are no demands for your time. By the time you get to the end of the day and all the kids are done, it's 9 o'clock at night, and I'm A, exhausted, B, I've had dinner, because it's really important to us to eat as a family. So we eat at 6:30 dinner, and I don't really want to train hard out just after I've eaten dinner. So just that, it works really well for me. So I usually get up about 5, maybe have a slice of toast. I go out training from sort of 5:30 till 7:15 maybe. Then 3 times a week, I do a strength session for half an hour. And then literally it is 2-minute shower, grab something to eat on the way, and drop my son at nursery. So I need to be out of the door by 8 o'clock to make it in time for dropping at nursery and clinics. So it is a really tight turnaround. It helps to have everything ready the night before. So you're, like my head torch in winter charged up and my kit ready and my shoes ready. I make it as easy as possible so that I can almost roll out of bed and kind of still set off half asleep, because the hardest bit's always getting out the door. Once I'm out the door and I'm running, it's very rare that I would want to go back. In fact, if I felt really bad and wanted to go back at that stage and I'd been running for a while, I just would go back because I'd know there was something wrong. Because generally once I'm out, I enjoy it. And I always come back, as I say, unless you were ill or something, I always come back feeling better than I did when I went out. So it really is, the hardest bit is getting up. I think it does help me having something to train hard for. So for example, when I was training for Barkley, it just gives you this whole kind of new motivation to get out of bed. I suddenly wasn't finding it difficult to get out of. It wasn't difficult at all because I wanted to do it so much. Helped me as well having a coach, because I had a training session, so I knew that I needed to fill those sessions, and I knew that that was my only slot in the day to do it, at that kind of 5 a.m. slot. So if I didn't get up and out of bed, then I wouldn't fill it. So those are kind of things that help with motivation. And so that's kind of how I do it on a kind of a purely practical point of view, is the early mornings. And then at weekends, things with the kids, now they ride bikes, so you can do an extra session by running alongside the bikes, for example, or we go hill walking. And if you're carrying the family rucksack and you're kind of running behind kids, then that's like extra training. When they were babies, I was carrying an increasing weight of baby up the mountain, So there's all these kind of extra little things that you can do. I when I'm in the lab, I cycle commute from the nursery drop off. So that's like 50 minutes of cycling each day as well. I'm just kind of fitting in little things. I tend to, Saturday morning, I do my training session still really early in the morning. And then I get to the swimming pool, which is where I meet my husband for the kind of fun session with the kids. He drops them off there and goes running himself. And we go to the fun session. Usually I get there a bit early, and then I can have a swim and maybe do a sauna session if I'm training for something in high mountains or in heat. So it's just these like little things. I think partly, I am going to stop in a minute. I think partly it's about priorities, So we don't have a television at home. I'm quite efficient, and I think that's come from my kind of career as a vet. Like, it's pretty intense, the training that you go through to be a specialist vet. So I'm a European diplomat in internal medicine. And I think those years of really like working super long days, working nights, I just kind of took every moment that I had and used it. And I think that's actually been a real advantage now, because if you really want to do something, you somehow fit it in, and the rest kind of fills in the bits around it. So I think you'd be surprised once you start to prioritize something, how much you can actually fit in. But there are some things like the fluff between, I guess, like maybe walking past television that's on and stopping to watch it. I don't have that. So it is, just a little bit about priorities as well. Sorry, that went for a long time. Hopefully that's kind of answered your question.
Well, I guess it knocks the term, and we use this, and it's not a desultory thing, but the word hack comes out. There's no hack there. There's no shortcut at all. It's not a thing. It's.
I think sometimes people will just want like a magic answer, like I'm gonna pull another 24 hours out the day, and I would love that, but it's not the case. I'm just like,
I think you're right, like kind of that when you've got something that you're really invested in, you prioritize and you find, like you make the space for it amongst your busy life. So I think that's kind of the thing that struck me is like with Barclay, it's like, right, game on, like I'm out doing this.
Yeah. And, it's kind of funny because if you mentioning Barclay, that it was like that, wasn't it? It was like down to every second. I had to use every second. So it's kind of, there's an interesting parallel there, because it was literally like squeezing the most out of every second in the same way that like your everyday life is. Yeah.
Being the ghost of, being the ghost of Christmas future as the person with older kids. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? You look I'm just thinking back on, the lives that you both are living at the moment with young families, and you're like, how did we even live? How did now that you're out of it, and we're eating lotuses and having naps, and doing things like that, like having a nap in the afternoon. It's actually quite nice. Took me a long time to get into the habit, but now I'm there. My God,
lucky duck.
I know. But although, if we want to take it back to sort of a Gary Oldman, I did my time, 12 years of it, in Azkaban. But wow, just incredible. It's that grind, hey.
Mm-hmm. You've had a few goes at the Barclay to finish it. What are we going to see next from you? Like you've said, you haven't got anything big on the horizon at the moment, or do you? What projects or races are on your radar? Anything like Jogle, or is it all purely kind of like mountains and gnarly terrain?
So I don't even. What do you mean by Jogle? I don't even know what that is. Or is it like joggle or something? What
yeah. Oh, sorry, joggle. Yeah, joggle or the jog.
No, but I've heard about it. I don't really know what it is. So you can enlighten me.
So I don't know how I know about this and you don't. But basically, so you can go Land's End to John O'Groats, which is the jog, or you can go John O'Groats to Land's End, so running the length of the UK.
Okay. Yeah. So I have heard of that. Yeah. I guess the thing for me is it's like I just love to run on the mountains. So I don't know if it would be too much. I think if you did something like that, I would do it, but I would do it like I would insist on finding a route that wasn't on the road. So it wouldn't it wouldn't challenge the jog record.
Yeah.
It would just be my own thing. So I think. So I do have loads of things that I want to do actually, and like I think the more you look and the more I get invited quite a lot to races, which sound amazing all over the world now. But again, I try not to fly, so it's kind of fairly easy in most cases just to say sorry, but I can't kind of fit that in at the moment. But there are races that I know that I want to do. At some point, I would like to run Hard Rock, just because I'd like to experience it. I'd like to. I'd love to come across to New Zealand at some point, but I think we want to do that with a family and just, I mean, it probably would be more for like 4 to 6 weeks in a holiday and just literally like explore and see the mountains and maybe do a race or something like that.
Well, I was going to say, Jasmin, if you didn't want to spend, like if you're worried about flying and wanted to spend more time, I'm sure I could talk to a friend who's a vet and get you a job for a year or something. Like you. Once you're here, you want to spend ages, right? Like we've got so much good stuff.
I mean, yeah, and that's the nice thing about being a vet is it literally is a ticket to the world in terms of work. But there's lots of things that I want to do. Yeah, so I actually in September I started a race called the Tour de Géant, which is a kind of a race in Italy around the Aosta Valley, which is 350 kilometers, maybe 26,000 meters of climbing. It's a non-stop race. And I think it's an amazing race. Like I did like 8 hours well, then things sort of fell apart and I walked another 24. And it was a bit of a miserable kind of death march. I just didn't want to give up. And in the end I pulled out and it was totally the right thing to do. And my husband had kind of surprised me by coming out there and to crew, and I didn't know I was going to have any crew. So it was actually ended up being amazing because we had 2 days with no kids in the mountains and no work, no agenda. And actually I can honestly say we talked more in 2 days than we have in the last 7 years, which is like a bit shocking, but because we do occasionally get days together, but usually we go running or do something like that. So it was just like we didn't have anything. We just drank coffee, ate cake, ate ice cream, drank some wine. It was really, really nice. So I don't see that as I don't look back on it as a really negative memory, but I do look back on it as unfinished business. So I don't know, there's lots of things that I think kind of came together. I felt pretty fit when I did that race, when I went to do the race. So I just think there was maybe a few things that came together to kind of derail it. But I want to go back to do the Tour de Géant. At some point I'm going to have a go at Backyard Ultra just because kind of fascinated by the concept. I've always been fascinated by the idea of anything that sort of pushes you mentally, like that side of ultra running. I think that's kind of partly what drew me to Barkley, because Laz has really tapped into that thing of, how far you can push yourself and what's possible, not just physically for a human, but I think mentally as well. And I think he's got a bit of a vision in that sense. And I think the Backyard Ultra is along those lines as well. It's a different sort of thing, but I'm not saying that would be very good, but I'm just kind of interested because I don't think it necessarily plays into the same people that would maybe do a race well. There's lots of reasons for that. But I think I'll do that at some point. And then here in the UK, there's kind of challenges that I'd like to do close to home because, I think that kind of trying to do more things close to home is a good idea in the current climate. So all the kind of Scottish mountains above, I think, 3,000 feet are the Munros, and I'd like to, at some point, have a go at a continuous round of the Munros, which has been done before a couple of times, but it's going to take like 3 to 4 weeks. So it's just the time away from the kids. Yeah, those sorts of things. So there's lots of, and I'm probably forgetting several things. So I have lots of things I would like to do. I'd like to do as in the States, there's a challenge, isn't there, with the 40, I'm trying to remember, I've totally forgotten.
Nolans.
Yeah, I'd like to do, so those sorts of things I would like to do as well. So there's like a few of those sorts of challenges that I've heard of and thought of and said I would like to do that. So it's just a case of, I think if we go somewhere far away, we'll probably now go for a longer period as a kind of a memorable family holiday and take the kids hiking and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's very exciting. There's lots of things that I'm excited about.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you end up doing. The world's your oyster. But obviously, it is, but you're choosing to do it quite in quite a considered way. So you've co-founded the Green Runners, is that right?
Yeah.
What are the green? Tell us about the green runners. What are they about?
Yeah, so it's a community. It sort of started here in the UK, but it's definitely spreading around the world. So the idea is it's a community of runners hoping to kind of inform people and inspire people to make greener decisions in their running. So very briefly, it's based around 4 pillars, thinking about how you move. And for most runners that race, that's travel to races. Like that's the biggest kind of carbon footprint of our sport. So maybe flying to fewer races, thinking of a kind of top race that you want to go to. And if you can travel more locally, that's obviously better by public transport or sharing a car with lots of people. But so that's kind of the main one is thinking about how you move. The next one's how you kit up. So I don't run for any kind of company. I choose to try and instead show that you can repair your kit and make your shoes last as long as possible. So there's the Green Runners, for example, has advice about repairing your shoes. So there's loads of really good advice about how you can do that and try and make them last longer. So even if you don't become a member, you can just, look at the website and there's loads of useful tips. Then the third pillar is about how you fuel. So we know that just moving to more of a plant-based diet, and none of these things are like absolute. It's just about making small changes that are gonna make a difference and cumulatively. And then the final one is how you speak out. And I think that's arguably the most important one. And that's not just within the running community, because as runners, we are the consumers, so we have the power to change. And this is mainly thinking about events, because the big events are the ones that, are going to have the biggest kind of impact on the environment. But we have the power, as consumers, to say what we want and what we're willing to accept. And so I think that's where we kind of have a lot of power. And the interesting thing is that once you start to kind of think about these things, it spills over into other areas of life as well. So it's not, it might start within the running community because that's where us co-founders felt we had the biggest influence, but I think when it moves beyond that. And it's nice to find that the kind of Green Runners has become a bit of a voice, I think, for the running community, certainly within the UK, but I think that's spreading as well. And it's just that some kind of concrete sort of voice that we can raise issues through. It's totally volunteer-led. It's a charity. So anybody that wants to get involved, it's just a case of, the main thing is making a pledge to even just tiny little things it might be, but how you're going to try and make a difference. And then you just pay a very small amount and you can get a badge. There's no T-shirt, obviously, because we're trying to promote not buying more T-shirts. But you can get a badge to sew onto your kit to show that you're a green runner. But from my point of view, I always say the most important thing is doing the thing. So even if you don't become a member, if you change maybe fly less to fewer races and kind of target the ones that you're really passionate about, then that in itself will be a massive difference if multiple people do that.
What do you think the clarion call of the bigger races is? We're cupless. And you go, great, we're cupless, but there's so much. What do you think that the big races especially, what could they do differently or better?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've picked up on like something, like a key thing. I think sometimes there's these little things that are easy to do and that they shout about. And then the irony is that compared with like the big picture, it's like a drop in the ocean. It's not really the important thing. So like, I mean, a typical example, and I don't want to keep thinking on the TMB, but like an example would be, in that situation, they now encourage you, that you have to get points by running races and as part of their series around the world. And some of those races are in places that you can't actually get to really without flying. So like I have a big problem with that. I also have a problem with publishing the number of points because it just encourages people to get more and more points for a race that's really highly sought after. So it's just, I think basically race organisers, we should be working towards a model where people can race races closer to home, and if we, to get the more competitive races, fewer runners should be needing to travel to kind of find that competition, I think personally. But I also think that if we are going to do kind of qualifying races, it would be a better model to be able to just use to show that you can run a race of 100 miles, it would be better to just be able to run a local race, and it doesn't necessarily have to be part of a series that that's kind of bought out every local race to make it 100 part of their kind of thing. So I think the biggest thing that, to answer your question, sorry, we can't kind of talking specifically about one race, but I think to answer your question, the race organisers need to be looking at travel, and sort of, I think we should be moving to a model where there's more people racing locally, and maybe doing challenges as well locally that would actually test them in the same way and would excite them in the same way that a race would, but just wouldn't necessitate the travel abroad. I think we need to move out of this kind of mindset that it's okay to fly for a weekend somewhere to run a race. I think maybe doing that once a year, but I don't think that should be a regular thing. And so the race organisers need to kind of balance that. Actually, the Green Runners are working on lots of guidelines for race organisers, and talking about local races, it might be something as simple as putting on a minibus to this train station, asking the race organizer or the race organizer moving their start time on a Sunday morning by an hour, so it makes it possible for people to get there by train. So these are, for smaller race organisers, these are the sorts of things that really will make a difference, because that's going to change the kind of pattern of travel to the race. There's races in the UK here that incentivise people coming, like 4 people in a car, and you get like a discount. There's a race locally here where everybody gets a free entry if they turn up walking or on a bike. That's so, like, those sorts of things are fantastic. Because the main thing, as has come back down to, is the travel to get there. So
that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing them come out, Jasmin. It's these are things that we don't often consider, and I mean, I guess New Zealand's slightly trickier due to our smaller population, but definitely some food for thought there.
Well, I mean, I think about the race that we just had this weekend, and again, this is a race that, a Tarawera Ultra Trail, we're down the bottom of the world, and we're, a long way from pretty much everywhere except for Australia. Even then, that's sort of 3 hours in a plane. But the amount of people flying down, especially because there was a golden ticket, right? So, the amount of professional athletes from the Northern Hemisphere who were down here, and cool. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. But you're right, that's a lot of, even when you think about, like, no amount of plastic cups in the world, would offset that travel.
Yeah. And it's hugely complex, contentious issue, and the last thing I want to do is preach, and just to finish on the note that the Green Runners is not about being perfect. Like, I'm not nowhere near perfect, so it's just about trying to make small changes, and it's better to be trying than not trying at all. So that's.
Well, I guess it's that thing, it gets pushed onto us, doesn't it? It's that thing of, and I remember Damien being on the podcast ages ago, and he said, you can recycle, right? You can recycle, and you say you chuck your, I don't know, something plastic goes in the bin and you're beating yourself up about it because you're a climate terrorist. But there are these big companies and big systems that are incentivized to make, climate terrorism, I guess, their business, and there's the systemic stuff, but it gets pushed onto us, the individual. Like, no, you've got to chuck your coffee cup in the correct slot, or your kids aren't getting Christmas presents. Versus, like, we've got these companies who are, their stock and trade is making money from, buggering up the world. It's an interesting. It's quite the. They've worked the spin quite well.
Yeah, for sure. That's why the speaking out one is really kind of pillar is really important.
What was your first taste of the sport? I mean, we've talked about all these amazing things that you love and that you do, but what was your first kind of taste of running?
So I was as a kid, I was really active. My parents spent loads of time outside with us, especially my mum. We were just outside all the time in every weather, and we did things like, we're looking back, even at the time I was aware that we were a bit weird. Like, if you talk about weird, as in, we weren't, our family did things like, we'd do a walk for Greenpeace or something, but we'd walk 5 miles to get there, and when we do the 10-mile walk, and then we'd walk again back, and we were I don't know, we were primary school kids, so that wasn't entirely normal, do you know what I mean, at that point as well. And I was kind of vaguely a sort of aware periphery that other people didn't do that sort of thing. And we went hiking, we hiked and slept out under the stars. We used to sleep in a bivy bag. We didn't even have a tent then. I don't know, my parents were kind of close. I don't know if it was about being closer to nature or if it was a lighter thing to do at that time, but it, like those sorts of things. So I spent lots of time outside with my parents. And when I was sort of a teenager and into my 20s, I did a lot of hiking with my brother. Just in mountains, mainly all over Europe. And we'd always go to kind of the most remote places, and we'd take stuff for like 7 to 10 days. And we'd aim really not to see anyone. So we wouldn't go down to get more food. So we'd start with these really heavy bags, and they'd get progressively lighter as you ate your way through the week. And we always ended up hungry by about day 4 or something, kind of rationing. But yeah, so that, I think, I wasn't a runner, but that was kind of my background. I rode horses all the way through my teens, did quite a lot of swimming. And occasionally I'd run back from the stables just because there was nobody to pick me up. And I remember running in, because when I used to say I didn't run till I was an adult, but I guess I did little bits like that. And I remember running in like long riding boots and a wax jacket, and I had to run up the hill, and it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 kilometers. And I just remember like running, saying in my head, I quite enjoyed. I remember the discovery of kind of realizing it was fun to try and run to the lamppost and then, before you walk type thing. And then, and again, so even maybe back then I was kind of experienced that kind of joy of the challenge, maybe of kind of setting yourself like little targets and then seeing whether you could do it, and that kind of physical exertion. But to answer your question, I didn't start running till I was, I ran at university, maybe 20 minutes around the park type thing, but that was maybe like 2 or 3 times a week. It wasn't like, I wasn't what I would call a runner. But when I left university and I was working in a practice close to home and in the Peak District, a colleague kind of knew that I was outdoorsy and suggested I go along to a hill race, like what we call here in the UK a fell race, or in England anyway. And I did. And I really loved it. Like it was only, I don't know, maybe 4 miles or something, maybe 6 or 7K. And it was just up a hill and back down again. And I remember sort of falling over a lot because I didn't have the right shoes on. And I just thought, this is like, it just remember it being this really kind of eye-opening, joyous experience. And it was like opening a treasure box onto this kind of secret world that I didn't know existed. And all these people that wanted to do the same as me, like wanted to be in the hills and in the kind of wild places and just enjoy them. There's very little kind of media and fell running. There's essentially no, there's very little prize money. You just get maybe a cake at the end or a bottle of wine. There's no egos. Like the very amazing athletes run with the very kind of slowest, and there's afterwards everybody just mingles and has a cup of tea, and there's no distinction. I love that about the sport. It's really low key in kind of the world of sport. So all those things I sort of fell in love with. I started going to a local club, out training, and I remember when I first went along, I sort of thought, I hope I'm not the slowest one there, because I wanted to go on the proper hills in the evenings, but I was worried that I would be the slowest. And then quite quickly I wasn't the slowest, and then I was always up for everything. So when a friend suggested, oh, do you want to try doing this ultra race? I was like, yeah, why not? So I think I ran my first ultra off the back of like, I'd been running mainly 6 miles or so in training. I ran one 17-mile training run, and then I just ran 33. So it was just like, there was no build up. That was, like the typical thing at that point. I just was willing to try everything, and I got injured quite a bit. But yeah, it was like, I sort of had that same kind of mentality that I do in some ways now of like, oh, it's exciting to do something new, and it's fun when you don't know if you can do it or not. That's kind of when it's most fun.
Fell running seems so integrated. Like, have you read Feet in the Clouds, Ellie?
No.
It's just the most gorgeous. It's like if Born to Run is the American book of running at that time, Feet in the Clouds is the British one. Richard Asquith. It's about fell running and the Bob Graham run, and it's the most gorgeous. It's just, don't get me started how gorgeous that book is. It's gorgeous, eh? Like, it's just gorgeous. It seems such an integrated sport. Ultra running, or this extreme stuff, it can be seen as quite separate to our lives. But what do you think it is about fell running that is it seems so integrated into the fabric of the community?
I think there's like a long tradition of it, isn't it? It's like I think originally the fell races were kind of part of the local village show, and they were part of the in the villages in the countryside, they're kind of part, there was always a race up the local hill. And so I think it's got a really long history. I think in some ways it's kind of like, there's a classic, the very famous fell runner, Joss Naylor, who died last year, very sadly, and he was kind of much loved. But he was like a sheep farmer in the Lake District in the Valley of Wasdale, and it's essentially, I mean, fell running is a bit like being a sheep farmer. You kind of like find your way across the hills and across, find these little trods, and a lot of it's about that connection to the landscape. So it helps. It's like locals have a real advantage because you're not running along a trail. For most part with fell racing, you're actually running between points, and you just choose the best line. So if you're local and you know the best line around the mountains, and then that gives you a real advantage. And so there's a big navigational aspect, but there's also this kind of connection with the place, and that's, I think, it's almost like it's passed down through generations, that knowledge, in the same way that a sheep farmer and sheep pass on that kind of that hefting knowledge. It just feels kind of that when you talk about the kind of the fabric of the landscape, I guess it's that connection to the place. And that's really lovely. That's why I like to, if you race in different places in the UK, you're always aware that the locals know, and it's so much more of an advantage, I think, than in trail running, because there you've got like a route, you might have a GPS, it's all flagged. It's not that much of an advantage to be local, but in a fell race it is.
I love that. Interestingly, like New Zealand and trail running is very much about that connection to the land too. And I think that's just so beautiful to kind of be on other sides of the world, but we still have that same love and connection and appreciation for it. It's really...
Maybe it's like we share a common, as that colonial thing, hey, we're of the same kind of heritage, we're the same, what does it say, meat, different gravy, whatever you want to say, like it's the thing, isn't it?
Jasmin, I've got an interesting question for you. One of the things that I most loved to come out of the Barclay was the photo of you, absolutely worked, lying against the gate with a bit of drool coming out of your mouth. That image to me speaks of like a strong woman who'd spent it all, who conquered. And it's kind of flipping the script on decades of women can play sport, but they must look glamorous doing it, like how do you feel about that image and about your body image? Like, I'm keen to kind of pick into that a bit.
Yeah, I guess there's a few photographs from that kind of finish that are almost a bit iconic. I have one of them on my wall, actually. And, I'm proud of it because I just, to be honest with Barclay, I'm proud of it. I just full stop, I'm proud. It was a feeling that lasted and still there, actually, much more so than any other race. It took me quite a long time to kind of get it into my head that I'd actually done it. And every time I realised I had done it, it was this like really warm discovery, this kind of like this just like kind of this flood of warm joy at the memory of it. I remember dancing around the kitchen when we got back with my son, and it was just like euphoria, and that lasted for much longer than most, as I say, events. And I think the reason was because it was really a personal thing. It was like a personal battle. It was nothing about the world watching. It was definitely nothing about the kind of praise and prizes afterwards or anything like that. It was just something that I'd achieved, and I think it was that kind of, the depth of the feeling afterwards was kind of proportional to the effort that it cost me to do it. So definitely, I've talked in interviews before, like I definitely had to dig deeper to finish Barclay than anything I've ever done before, and arguably probably anything I will ever do again. In those kind of last 8 minutes, I was so far into the red, and I already was way past the point that I thought I couldn't possibly do anymore. But then faced with the idea of losing out by a few seconds, I managed to dig even deeper to kind of access this kind of level that I'd not had to tap into before. And so I think the kind of joy that came afterwards was a kind of product of knowing how many times, especially on that last loop, I really was like, I'm not going to give up. I can do this. That's that self-belief, that which was, looking back, I still can't really believe that I had it so strongly. And I don't really know where it came from. It was just, I really had this self-belief this year. And then so many times when you think of how many times there were little things that I could have just waited a bit longer for, or just been a bit more kind of slow about, that would have cost me those 99 seconds. But I just never stopped pushing. I was really, really wanted it so much. So that's why it's such a joy. And so when you talk about that photo, I think I look at it and I'm just proud of myself. And and I don't feel any embarrassment about the way I look, because I know that I left it out. I left it all out there. So, you know, like, I think I'm like, I own it, that photo. Like, I know, because I think quite often in photos, you kind of put on this, you know, you do the smile or whatever, and you kind of, you runners, you know, run faster going past the camera, they smile, they look great, you know, but there it's like, it's raw, isn't it? Like, I had, like, when I finished, I didn't even know if I'd, like, for sure if I'd done it. By that point, I think everything was peripheral except getting to that gate. That was the only thing left in my mind. And so when I hit the gate, all I could think about was, now I can stop and breathe. And you can see the way I hit the gate, and I didn't even decelerate. I just kind of hit it, went over it, and then fell to the ground. And that's because everything else, like, I couldn't really see anymore. I couldn't, you know, all I was focusing on was that bit of gate in front of me. But in terms of people on either side, I wasn't really seeing them. And I wasn't really thinking about the fact that I was finishing Barclay. It kind of got down to this really basic animal instinct of needing to get to the gate, and you can see that on the photos. And so, I sort of see it, and like, it's a semi kind of like shudder of the memory of that moment, and at the same time, it's this like, real pride of what I achieved.
I'm maybe kind of making the wrong kind of link here, but it almost seems to me birth-like, like, you know, that you've got this pride over this body that's done this amazing thing, that you know, like, that was kind of the tunnel vision focus. Like, can you relate it to birth, like that sort of thing? Like, it sounds like you're really proud of your body, and that you don't actually care about body image, and like that image just sums up how much effort went into it.
I think you're totally right. You know, like, I think in many ways that's in so many ways, that's the best comparison. The thing is, with birth, right, you don't have a choice once you're in it. I remember my son was born, like, the last 50 minutes were really fast, and it was really painful. And I remember thinking, like, if I could stop this now, I would stop it. Like, I couldn't, like, but you just don't have a choice yet. But the thing with running is you do have a choice. But the amazing thing with Barclay was, like, more than anything before, it was almost like I didn't have a choice. Do you know what I mean? I was so, like, so deeply committed to that moment. So there's lots of parallels, and I think you're right. Yeah, I was just proud of. I was kind of proud of that raw humanity and what I achieved. And going back to it, like, it's just like kind of personal, like, joy of the thing, not the kind of worldwide, like, acknowledgement or anything like that. It's just a really kind of it's a kind of a personal joy.
You're the first person that certainly I've ever spoken to, and we've had Laz Lake on the podcast, we've had Greg Hamilton on the podcast, not for, you know, it took us 5 years to get him on, but we did get him on at gunpoint. You're the first person I've ever heard discuss Barclay with a feeling, and it makes the race make sense. It feels so arbitrary, and if I'm being honest, and this is from an outsider perspective, you know, this is the hardest thing in the world, and they've shot more people to the moon or whatever, right? Yeah, it's a super hard race. But actually acknowledging that the achievement and the joy of finishing it just seems like, up until now, you know, people finish it and it's like, yes, that was good, and it was very hard, and hard. It's so lovely to hear you actually talk about it in a real, you know, joyful. It makes the race make sense, which is
that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's also these little moments of joy on the race, you know, like, and it's interesting because you're so focused on that race. You have to be focused the whole time. That's one of the things that makes it really hard. You can't stop focusing. But even so, like, I remember, like, little moments of joy, like the sunset, and I remember, like, flashes of colour, like in the brown forest, like butterflies that were starting to come out, you know, and I remember those as kind of like key. There were moments when I was still, like, able to appreciate the fact that I was in this wild place, and Barclay is, you know, the forest itself is not particularly, when you're on first sight, it's not particularly attractive. It's not like, not in the way that the Alps are, or these big kind of mountains where it's easy to see the kind of the attraction of the vista and the views and the kind of splendor of it. It's not really like that, but it grew on me year after year till the place was familiar, and I could really appreciate those those big old trees and that kind of like the quiet winter forest, you know. So, and I did have these flashes of like connection to it. But as I say, most of the time you're massively focused, but there were moments like where it came back to me, and that was also really joyous.
Do you think that joy came from, you know, like trying, so first and then second and then the third time? Like, is that part of why you feel like you had that great joy, because there was so much invested in it? And like, what would you say to somebody, because I think that's, you know, part of what it makes it really relatable, like people that are doing these hard things, it's hard to grasp, you know, hard to fathom putting yourself in that position to do something difficult. What would you say to somebody who's lining up for something again after failure?
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of the kind of the reason that it was so special, was having, you know, I guess the multiple attempts. Also knowing, you know, that there was no, like, I guess as a finisher, there's no guarantee, even if you ran it the next year, that you would get the right weather conditions, that everything would come together. Like for me, I knew that everything had to come together at the same time for me to finish that race, the fitness, the weather, everything. And for sure, the third attempt was a kind of accumulation, especially navigation, because I ran, I think in the first 2 attempts, I ran a total of 7 loops. You know, only 3 counted the second year, but I'd run 4. And of those, I think I ran out of the 7, I'd run 4 on my own. And that's a massive advantage in terms of the navigation, having made the mistakes myself, having worked it out. I really felt confident about the navigation this year. So yeah, it was and I'd written, you know, myself notes when I got back, and so it was like it was building each year. And so I guess to say it to anyone, if they have had a failure, like it sounds a bit corny, so like how to phrase it, but I didn't really look on it as failure. Like it was more, I was so determined to reach. In some ways it was, because I'd gone there to finish the thing. From the very outset, I was saying that I'm not going there to try and do a fun run. I'm going there to try and finish the thing. But I was really pleased the first year when I did a fun run, because I was prepared that it was going to take a few years of effort potentially. And so I think it was like it was a building block. And each time I learned more. And I knew that, you know, the second time I did 3 leaps 4 hours faster than the first time. So, and by my calculations, if I did that the third year and took another 4 hours off, I would have 14 hours each for the last 2, and essentially that's pretty much what happened. So so I think you try and kind of reorientate the way you look at these things and think of it as a kind of step towards the ultimate success. In some ways, when you finally get there, it's even sweeter for those kind of tribulations you had on the way.
What was it like? You know, you said you grew up with your parents and your mum just being outside heaps, 30-mile walks, etc. What was it like being awarded an MBE?
I mean, it was kind of a lovely sort of mark of recognition. As I say, I come back to the kind of the, you know, for me, there's nothing that could possibly top the fact that I did it. You know, like it's a personal thing. That was the joy of it. I think it's nice in some ways, because I think it became almost a symbol for sort of female achievement, and that kind of, especially for the maybe person that considers themselves the standard like working mum. I think I sort of became a bit of a kind of figurehead for women worldwide, and in that way I sort of felt like I was collecting the MBE for everyone that's taking on a challenge, that's maybe just considered, you know, like me, consider themselves a normal person, but has a dream and is trying to do something big. And so, like, I like to think of myself that I sort of collected it for everyone, really. And as I say, the kind of the main joy for me was the finishing the thing. Any prize that you give me afterwards is not going to come anywhere near that kind of that euphoria and that joy. But obviously it was a great honour, and especially my dad was, you know, really proud. It meant a lot to him, so we went and collected it with my mum and dad and my little girl, and she was delighted to be at the castle Windsor. It was, the whole day was a kind of wonderful family experience, and it was sort of very exciting as well.
That's beautiful. I think thinking about that kind of from the female point of view, like what hopes do you have for your girl growing up?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Once you kind of have a little girl, you start to think of the world in a different way. I mean, I think I grew up like remarkably, like not really seeing the kind of, I think this is just thanks to my parents, like they did an incredible job in that way, because people often ask, but like I didn't really see being a woman as a barrier to anything. And I think, I don't know whether it was just, obviously I was brought up in the same way that my brothers were brought up, and I was given all the same opportunities. I was never told that you can't do this because you're a girl. But it's just, I never really saw that. In fact, if anything, when people suggested that, or there was something where, there was a men's record and I thought that it was possible to break it as a woman, I just got really excited by that. Like I kind of liked to defy like the expectations and the standard and the kind of what people thought was possible. And, that kind of feeds into the whole Berkeley thing. So then so it's interesting that I didn't really see that in the world. And I realised I was had a really privileged upbringing, and obviously the world's still an incredibly unfair place for women, especially according to cultures. But seeing my daughter, it makes you see it in a whole new way, because now you're much more aware of the way the world really works, and even if things are improving, there's still kind of big imbalances and inequalities. And I just hope that I can kind of inspire in her the same kind of confidence and self-belief to sort of take on those kind of perceptions of what's possible for a woman, and to really take them on and believe in herself and be able to just show, rather I guess my approach was always just to say, if you say that, I'm going to prove you wrong, sort of thing. So I hope that I can sort of give her the confidence to do the same. And I think that, it comes down to self-belief to a large extent. Yeah. And she seems to have that at the moment. So hopefully she can keep it. But you worry a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenging place, the world at the moment, hey, and has been for a number of years. How do you? I mean, you're being so generous with your time, and we will get to the end of this. But how did you come home from Berkeley? Like you said, you've owned it. You're joyous. You've got that deep euphoria. But the social media aspect for a race that is so sort of non-social media. You can't have anything, you can't have a GPS, you can't, everything that surrounds it is so intently on social media and out into the world. There's such a lot of interest. How did you tune out that noise when you got home?
I mean, that was pretty hard. I can't really say I was able to tune it out. So, I guess the spine had prepared me a little bit for it already. I'd been through kind of one round of that crazy sort of change in life already. The weird thing about Berkeley, it's you're entirely out there on your own. It's a really, in many ways, it's a really isolated, personal kind of challenge that you're going through. And then, and also in the woods, that it's a really kind of intimate experience. And then you get out and suddenly all the world wanted to speak to me. And that, it was quite hard to kind of balance that. And, when people talk about recovery from Berkeley, I think the biggest challenge for me was just dealing with everything that came afterwards. And, part of me is not really a very kind of, I don't do it for the kind of recognition. I don't really care about social media. I find it a bit kind of anxiety inducing. So I struggled with all the requests, in the sense that I always wanted to please people, and especially lots of them were really positive things, really aiming to inspire people, young people, women. I find it difficult to say no, so I kind of said yes to a lot of things. But it was hard, because that's, people ask how I balance all these things, but it was just another thing to add in, and it was actually a really massive thing, and it did take a toll, in terms of, it challenged the whole family, because it put an extra strain on my husband when I was doing all these interviews and stuff. And then we went away in the summer for a month, and I didn't do anything. We literally took a break for a month, and that was a really wonderful thing to do. And it helped to kind of reconnect everybody and forget it all. And I was kind of better at saying no after that as well. So, and it's got much better. I sort of knew it would all die down and settle down, and I still get kind of regular requests, but I'm better at saying no or weeding things out. And ultimately it comes back to that thing of I feel in a really privileged position to be able to be regarded as a role model, to inspire people. I think in life, if you've been able to inspire one person to do something positive with their life, and then that's a real privilege, and then if you get these messages from so many people across the world, then it feels like a real responsibility, but also a really sort of joyous thing. I've been very inspired by their stories that they've shared with me, so I think with that comes kind of some responsibility. That's why I guess I do the interviews and things, because I think it's people tell me that it's changed their lives in some way and helped them. So I think ultimately I'm very lucky to be in this position. So I try to do what I can, but also kind of keep in mind that kind of my own mental well-being and that of my family as well.
And on that, Jasmin, I'd like to thank you. It's certainly not lost on us what a privilege this is to speak to you. So, it's not something. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on Dirt Church Radio. And I guess with that, we can land this plane, and it's early where you are. It's late where we are. So, look, Jasmin Paris will ask the question that we ask everyone who comes on Dirt Church Radio, and that is, what has been your greatest run ever?
I think I'd have to I have to say Barkley. I think, just in terms of how much is, and I go back to that point, is changed for me personally. Nothing to do with the whole what the world thought and that moment being so kind of widely shared in terms of photographs and tweets and so on. It's just what I went through in my own head, in those kind of quiet, those hours on that final loop. I guess those 13 to 14 hours on that final loop, especially in those final minutes. So I think it did change me in some way. And it's interesting, like, it leaves you with this, if you kind of go so deep and you do something that actually, looking back, you can't really believe you managed to do. It sort of leaves you with this, I guess, self-confidence, like this belief in yourself that goes beyond running. It's more about who you are. And I've really found that spilt over into other areas of life as well, like just in my belief in myself as a person, which has been a really positive thing. And so that's, I think, the kind of greatest joy of that moment. So it has to be Barkley. Before that, I probably would have said the day my husband and I spent on the Coolin Ridge together, which wasn't a race. It was just an incredible mountain day that we spent together, which also is a very special day in my memory.
Wow. Where can we, Green Runners, let's shout out Green Runners. Where can we find more information? Where are you on? I mean, I guess you have to use the internet. It is it's a necessary inconvenience. I won't say evil. Where is the Green Runners?
It's the greenrunners.com. So I think you can, if you just kind of look that up. And then they're also on Instagram and on like Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well. I don't really use Twitter anymore, but I still have a page there at the moment. I don't do that much social media. I do have a blog, Talking of Fells, and there might be some like exciting project coming up in terms of writing a book as well. So you can look up that.
So exciting. Look, Jasmin, thank you so much for coming on Dirt Church Radio, and all the best for the future.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Incredible. As the kids say, go off, Queen. So good.
Is that what they say?
Apparently so.
What does that mean?
She gave an 8.5 minute answer to a question. And I was really stoked by that. I had thought in my head that if we ever had the chance to get Jasmin on, she would be quite reticent, but it was really lovely to hear her talk so openly and amazingly and authentically around her experiences and just have it really, like I said in that conversation, really have the Barkley make sense.
Yeah.
Like we all know it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone knows it's super hard, that it's so hard that more people have like been on the moon or whatever it is. But for her to actually say, I loved it and I felt joyful and it was really, really cool. That was super choice. Can't wait to see what she gets up next.
Oh, I know. It's exciting, eh? She'll be dreaming big, whatever it is.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.